Okay, hi guys. Those who need notebooks, you can get your notebooks ready. Then we can begin. Okay. So, just a brief sort of recap from last week. Okay. Just a bit of a brief recap from what we looked at last week. Goodness. Okay. Okay, so just a recap from what we looked at last week. Anyone recalls what was last week all about?
Network configuration.
It was on configurations of networks, isn't it? We looked at things like setting up network routers, yes, and setting up a firewall by means of it being a DHCP server, isn't it? And you know what a DHCP server is, right? Well, what's a DHCP server? Oh, you crammed that part. What's a DHCP server? Yeah, what's a DHCP server? What is that? Yeah.
A server that configures the IP addresses automatically.
Yes, it assigns the IP addresses, isn't it? And we call that dynamic addressing. Ne? And then we before having the firewall, we were responsible for specifically setting the IP addresses, and that was called static addressing, isn't it? Yeah. But now for today, we're going to do things in a more hands-on approach. So in a more practical, not exactly visualized like the Cisco packet tracer did, okay? And the assignment for this week, it's only one, okay? And it's not exactly as intense as last week's assignment. That's due to the fact that for half the time you're going to be spent downloading very, very large files, okay? You'll be setting up an operating system and so on and so forth, okay? But the theory for today, we'll be looking at penetration testing and auditing, which most of you guys are probably why you signed up for cybersecurity. You're like, we want to do the real stuff. We want to do the dangerous stuff, okay? So that is what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at auditing, and the whole idea of auditing is testing security, okay? Testing security, and remember, cybersecurity is not all about electronics, isn't it? You can also set up or test security physically. You can show up on site and perform the testing on site, okay? And that is also something that you have to look at in terms of your scoping and everything else, okay? But it's all about auditing, it's all about testing anyways, okay? All right, let's get started on the theory. We always start with the boring theory anyways. So, penetration testing. The idea of penetration testing, once again, it's all about auditing. It's all about testing the security parameters that you have set up, okay? So in terms of cybersecurity, there's many job fields as we know, isn't it? We have the security engineer, and the security engineer is more aligned to the blue team, okay? Remember, engineering is about building, isn't it? Yeah. So the security engineer or the cybersecurity engineer is responsible for setting up that security architecture and everything else, okay? The whole idea that there should be fingerprints at the front, or this should be a Windows XP, or this should be this and this should be that, this is set forth by the security engineer. Then we have the bad guy, which is the penetration tester, okay? And he is more aligned to the red team. Remember, blue team is defense, red team is offense, okay? So he's more aligned to the red team. And his job specifically is to test the security parameters that have been set up, okay? So he is now going to pretend as if he knows nothing that has been set up by the blue team, and then he's going to go in there and attempt to break it down. If he is able to do that, then that means that the engineer has to rebuild his thing, because clearly it doesn't work. We cannot stage it and put it into production, then we have to redo it again. And if he does that again and you still manage to break it, then he needs to go back and do his job again. Okay, that's the whole idea. And again, these people in the end, they're going to end up hating each other, which does make sense, isn't it? Yeah. If you keep breaking my job, I want to get the job done, but you keep on having me going back to do my job over and over and over and over again. But that's the whole concept. Okay. So that's what the ethical hackers are doing. Okay. They go in there, they test the security, and remember, there is something called the target of evaluation. Okay. So before you start your penetration test, whoever hired you is going to give you a document. Okay. And that document is to give you permission to, well, perform your auditing, okay? But in that document is going to be the target of evaluation, to say what are you allowed to evaluate and what are you not allowed to evaluate. If you want to put this into a practical perspective, think about it. Let's say a bank hired me to perform auditing, okay? So they need to give me a target of evaluation, otherwise I might go ahead and hack into the CEO's mobile phone, and then from there everything just gets messed up. Okay, so there has to be that thing that limits me from going off scope. Okay, and that's why we need that target of evaluation. Okay, but anywho, before we get into all that, there's a okay, there's a couple of words that you're going to see, you're going to hear, and they're going to sound like hell. Okay, but here's some of the words that you need to know. Words like vulnerability and obviously target of evaluation. Okay, which I've mentioned now, it's just a scope to say this is what you're going to be looking at, this is what you're allowed to look at, this is what you're not allowed to look at. Okay, that's the target of evaluation. But now, a vulnerability is a weakness, it's a mistake. In the concept of the engineer, the mistake that the engineer made, that is your vulnerabilities. Okay, and your job essentially is to find those vulnerabilities, find those mistakes. If you find those mistakes, then you are able to exploit them, okay? And the whole idea of exploiting is to take advantage of those vulnerabilities, okay? So whatever mistake that he made, you're going to take advantage of that one. For example, suppose there's some building, okay? And yes, they can put like a security guard in the front. Then for some odd reason, the security guard has one eye, okay? One working eye. That's a vulnerability, isn't it? What do you think the exploit would be? How do you think you would exploit that vulnerability? Walk behind him.
No, actually.
Or walk on the side, ne?
Yes.
Yeah, walk on the side on the eye that you can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I don't know. If he's colorblind or he can't see black people, then a white person. Something like that. Ne? Something like, okay, that's the whole idea of an exploit. It's the idea of taking advantage of that vulnerability. Ne? Then these two words are often confused, exploit and payload. Okay, those who did cybersecurity last year, it's the show of hands. Raise your hand. Yeah, well, what's the difference there?
An exploit is something that you send out, mostly something that's already been built. Meanwhile, a payload is something that's generated.
Too bright.
Yeah.
Oh, you thought you came here to see. Too bright. We'll go with that one. Okay. An exploit, it's code that is written to take advantage of the vulnerability. Okay? A payload, it's now the code that you use after you have taken advantage. Okay? Once I've broken into the machine, the things that I'm able to do to the machine, that's the payloads. Okay? The things that you're now sending. In other words, they call it command and control. Okay? That's another way of calling it. You'll take a look at that when you look at the cyberkill chain. Okay? Then another word you will see is a zombie. And no, a zombie is not the brain-eating thing in the concept of this. Okay? It's not the kind of stuff. Okay? A zombie is a compromised machine. Okay? Any machine that has been hacked into that you can essentially perform command and control, that's what we refer to as a zombie. And the computer that makes control of those is called a zombie drone. Okay? The one that's commanding them to do something, that's what we refer to as a zombie drone. Okay. Does that make sense? Just so that we get used to the terminologies before we go around confusing each other with big words. Okay. So before looking at the hash stuff, we need to understand the methodology of the cyberkill chain. Okay. The cyberkill chain, it's a whole methodology that was designed by, I don't know how to pronounce that name, Lockheed Martin. Okay, So he looked at different ways in which people hack into computers and all that, and he made this methodology that best explains it, okay? He gave this to many companies so they know which section and which part to secure themselves the most, and then by so doing, people can keep themselves safe, which is fine, okay? But those are the main advantages of the cyberkill chain. We'll look at the parts of the cyberkill chain and how it is followed step by step, but that's how it helps you. It helps you identify the weaknesses. It helps you pinpoint where the vulnerabilities lie, in which stage it lies, okay? It allows you to implement controls, okay? It allows you to have that motion in the ocean. That's the worst context I could have given it. It allows you to stop the flow, okay? If you manage to stop it there, then it cannot get to the end, okay? It's almost like the OSI model. If one dies, then communication cannot proceed, okay? That's a similarity with the cyberkill chain. And yes, it allows that early detection. You're able to detect those things early before they get to the vulnerable or the most important pieces, okay? Like the CEO's computer in this case, okay? So what does the cyberkill chain have really? Okay, we're going to look at the old cyberkill chain, okay? And then we're going to look at the improved cyberkill chain. Okay, the old cyberkill chain was this one. It has like what? There's like what, 7 pieces, okay? It looks simple, doesn't it? No. It's just 7 pieces to the cyberkill chain. There's reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, action and objectives. Okay? So, in terms of penetration tests, let's look at it first. Okay? First thing you're going to do is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance, sometimes they refer to it as information gathering. Okay? You gather as much information as possible. Remember, we assume that you know nothing about the targets of evaluation. You know nothing about them. All you have is a name. Okay? So you first perform your reconnaissance. You gather as much information as you can. Okay? Who is involved? What kind of computers do they have? Are there any email addresses involved? Maybe even the addresses of the employees of that entity. Anything like that. Okay? Things like a simple Google search or asking people, asking around, those kind of activities are involved inside that reconnaissance stage. Okay? Once I've gathered the information, then I perform the weaponization. So this is where I now create an exploit or a payload in this context. Okay? Where I now start to write up some code to help me do the work. Okay? I weaponize it. If it's creating a virus, I'll create a virus. If it's creating a phishing link, I'll create a phishing link. Anything that I'm going to essentially use, I create it during that weaponization stage. Okay? And then of course you cannot just create it. You then need to deliver that weapon in this case, or that payload or that exploit. You're going to then deliver it to the targets of evaluation. Ne? If we think about it, there was an instance of code name Alex, no one knows what his real name is, went to a bank with a nice little USB, plugged it in, and then he left. Okay. And then once he left, the entire bank started crashing. Okay. That is an instance of that delivery stage. Okay. And once you've delivered it, the exploitation, whatever you delivered, will then perform that exploitation. Okay. It's now taking advantage of all the vulnerabilities. And remember, the vulnerabilities are discovered during that reconnaissance stage. Yeah? So the exploitation happens, the vulnerabilities are used and all that and taken advantage of and everything else. Then it's followed by that installation stage. So although we've compromised the machine, some people can say, I might want to come back later. Ne? Yeah, I might want to come back later, hack it whenever I would like. I don't want to have to go through all this again. All I have to do is open my PC and just say, hi, John, and then it will immediately do whatever I want it to do, okay? And that's what we call a backdoor. And that's what happens during that installation stage, okay? I want to maintain the access, okay? So in other words, if there's a password that needs to be found, let me know the password so I don't have to re-crack it the next time I come back in. I'm not sure if that makes sense, okay? That happens during that installation stage. And then the delivery of the payload is the command and control. And during that command and control is, now I'm controlling that compromised PC, okay? And during the command and control, you can also perform lateral motion, where you find other PCs that are associated to the compromised one, okay? Yeah, that happens during that command and control. And then your actions and objectives, this is where you now go then, and you're now going to accomplish those objectives Depends on what your objective was. If it was a penetration test, then now you can draft up your document and say, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is what you need to fix, and this is what you need to fix, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. Okay? And if it was in terms of black hat, some people may then go in and start to install those ransomwares. Okay? If it was the objective of trying to make money out of them, then you would install a ransomware and disrupt the entire flow. Okay? This was the old methodology. Okay? But because life is not supposed to be easy, this is how the new cyberkill chain looks like. Okay? Yes, it starts with reconnaissance, isn't it? Yes, that's like right there. Starts with reconnaissance, followed by intrusion, exploitation, privilege escalation, lateral motion, obfuscation, denial of service, exfiltration, and then it goes over and over. Okay? And no, there is no new stuff from the old one, except we took some of the pieces and expand them a whole lot. Okay? For instance, the reconnaissance is still the same. Okay? It's still information gathering. You're still gathering as much information as you can on the targets of evaluation. Yeah. Then the intrusion, it's now the breaking in. Okay? It's now the breaking in because you do not always have to make a package. You do not always have to make a malware or a virus of some sort. Sometimes you may just have to crack a password and literally walk in through the door. Okay? So it's not always all about writing code and all that. Okay? Then you perform the exploitation. This part you know, isn't it? Yeah. Accessing that vulnerability that you found during that reconnaissance stage. Yeah. You access it. Then once you're done, privilege escalation. Excuse me. Now, the reason we put the privilege escalation there is, you guys recall the fact that Windows has privilege levels to it, isn't it? Yeah. You have administrative privileges. You have guest users and so on and so forth. It's not always that after exploitation you have the best privileges possible. You'll find that the account that you broke into was a managed user, and there's nothing you can do. You'll find that the time that you want to be installing malware, you cannot do that unless you're an administrator. Do you see that? So which is why we need to perform the privilege escalation, okay? Become the best user possible. Once that's done, then you can proceed to lateral motion, of which lateral motion is finding other computers associated with that one, okay? Once those ones have been found, then you perform obfuscation. The reason this is there is, for obfuscation, normally when you're performing penetration tests, you're fighting against the firewall and the antivirus. Okay? Antiviruses are also slow, okay? You'll find that your antivirus can find that it was hacked, and the hack was done 10 days ago, and it's only finding out about it now. Do you see that? They are also slow. They also take their time. So we perform some obfuscation, which is anti-forensics. It's almost the idea of don't trace me type of thing. Okay. So that's when we perform. We're almost masking the entire activity. Okay. If the firewall has logs, you go then delete the logs, so it doesn't show that someone logged into the PC at this time. We delete that log, so it just shows everything is normal, everything is in motion, everything is fine. Do you see that? Yeah. That's the whole idea of obfuscation. Oh, anti-forensics. Unfortunately, anti-forensics is not a thing. When the forensics investigators are in play, they will find you and they will catch you. Okay? Which is a wonderful job. Okay? Then there's denial of service. This one is not compulsory. Okay? Who recalls what denial of service is from lecture 1? You recall what denial of service is. What about the others? You can. Yeah, well, what's denial of service?
It's like putting like some traffic so that this is.
Yeah, so that it goes offline. Exactly. It's sending multiple traffic such that it goes offline. But that one is not compulsory, isn't it? You might find that you just want to sniff and find out what's going on. If you put them out of order and they're no longer in business, then there's nothing for you to catch, isn't it? Yeah. So it's not exactly compulsory. Then there's exfiltration. Exfiltration now is to find what's hidden behind them. Okay, what is hidden behind them? For instance, how does Capitec Bank manage the customers' data? How do they do that? We don't know, do we? Yeah, but during that exfiltration stage, that's what happens. You're now performing your investigation. What happens behind the hood? I mean, if you go to Capitec Bank, you'd like sit on the other side. Her PC is like facing her, and you can't really see what's going on. But when you perform this entire methodology, by the time you get there, you'll know what kind of app they're using, or probably the pin to access it, and so on and so forth, isn't it? Yeah, that's the way it gets to that stage. You exfiltrate them, yeah.
They're
Okay.
using Linux.
Eh?
They're using Linux systems.
No, they don't. They actually use Windows 7.
What I've seen once.
Nope, they use Windows 7.
How do you know?
They use Windows 7, but anyways, proceeding, then you can perform reconnaissance, and the reconnaissance now then proceeds to all the other machines that you have found during the lateral motion. You proceed with the same methodology up until you have compromised the entire network.
So wait, on the reconnaissance,
Yeah.
are they sniffing on the networks actually?
Yep, sniffing can also be a part of reconnaissance, yes. When it comes to reconnaissance, there's two types of reconnaissance. There's passive and active, okay? Passive reconnaissance, you don't interact with them, okay? You don't interact with the PCs or anything, you don't do that. You can do things as simple as searching them on Google. Just doing a simple Google search, you can find information like that. You don't have to interact with the targets. But active, now you literally communicating with the machines or doing Nmap or whatever, or Wireshark or sniffing or whatever it is. Yeah, that's when you're doing things actively. So in some cases, you can actually do both when it comes to that reconnaissance stage, both actively and passively reconnaissance. Yeah, yeah. Any other questions on the methodology? Or we're fine with the methodology? We're fine.
Sorry.
Yeah.
On the intrusion,
Yeah.
is it depending on the results that you got from
Of the
sniffing?
reconnaissance, yes. It also does depend on the results, yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Come on, Nick. Whoa. Yeah. Yeah. Lift. Oh, okay. Proceeding. Okay. So, to perform our penetration tests, okay, if you use Windows, it's not going to work, okay? Unfortunately, it's not going to work. Remember, we said we love Linux, and Linux is life, né? Yes. So we're going to use Linux, and the thing with Linux now is, we don't use just any Linux. You cannot just go and use Ubuntu and then that's it. And then booyah, you're now performing penetration tests. You cannot do that. You need an advanced penetration testing distribution, okay? Which is a special Linux that was specifically built for this task, okay? And there's many kinds that you can use. I've given some examples. The most famous and well-known is Kali Linux, okay, which looks
Down.
something like that. Okay, this is the modern version of Kali Linux. It looks something like that, okay? With a Komodo dragon and all that. It looks wonderful. I've used it myself for many years. It's the most preferred and it's the most industry recognized, but I still don't like it anyways. That's Kali Linux. Then there's Parrot. I've also used that one for quite a while, which looks something like that, okay? Remember, each of them come with tools, né? Some have more tools than others, but then again, yeah. Okay, then there's this wonderful one called Cyberkill. I don't know what happened to the creator, he just disappeared. Okay, it looks like that. Okay, I've used that one, and quite frankly, that's the one I've loved the most because it has over 1,000 tools to use. And then there's another one called Backbox. There's many kinds for you to use, and each of them have a different purpose. Okay, they also have a different purpose. But then the bread and butter to everything is just that it's for penetration testing. Okay, there's one that is built for forensics. Okay, I've used it's called Kane. I loved it so much. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Then there's Offcrack, there's J-Parted, and the others, and the others, and the others. Each of them, they serve a different purpose. The one that we're going to be sticking to, of course, is Uncle Kali here. It's the easiest to install. It has a friendly environment for you to learn. Honestly, if I give you something like that, you're gonna die. Okay. For my case, right now I'm not using Kali Linux. Okay. Or Parrot, or Cyborg, or Backbox. I'm using Mint. It's not an advanced penetration testing distribution, but I've rebuilt it to become one. Okay. That's something you can learn when you do Linux Plus. Yeah.
So what about Ubuntu?
You can rebuild Ubuntu to do that, but it's very difficult. It is very difficult to transition a a home-based operating system to become an advanced operating system. It needs experience because you'll be doing changes to the kernel and so on and so on. Yeah. It needs, you need to do Linux Plus to understand that one, and it's a whole course on its own.
Yeah, I've heard many points about it.
Yeah, you can do Linux Plus. You can do Linux Plus.
But-
Okay. So what are the tools of trade? We're going to be looking at not penetration testing as a whole. We're going to be looking at the first part of it, okay, the reconnaissance and information gathering. Ne? Then we're going to look at some fun parts of it, like sniffing and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on, okay, and so on and so on and so on, and even so on and so on, okay, yeah. And probably, how many of you guys have a Linux installed right now?
Does Mint come?
Who told you to install Linux?
Not use it.
Wait, who was that again?
Who told you? No, raise your hands again. Who told you to install it?
Not use it for.
Yeah?
I've been using it before.
Okay, who uses Kali? What's wrong with it? Who told you to get it?
I was just practicing it's from last year.
Uh-huh. Who uses Parrot? You see? There's something wrong with you.
Oh,
Okay, there's something wrong.
it's good to be alone. It's
And
good to be
no one uses Cyberhawk, no one uses Backbox.
Mint.
Ubuntu. Okay. Mac. You do see this is where Mac gets sidelined.
Oh.
just put you right there.
It's got-
Anyway,
it's
anyhow.
Windows, guys.
So,
The Windows here.
for our sake and the sake of our, okay, to perform penetration tests, privately, there is no need for a license to perform it privately. Okay, you can practice it in the comfort of your own home. Okay, as we proceed with the course, you're going to be introduced to 3 guys. Ne? There are going to be these 3 guys you're going to be introduced to. You're gonna hate them with all your life. Ne? Those who did cybersecurity last year, they hate 2 of them so far. Okay, there's a new one that they're gonna hate more than these 2.
What?
Yeah. Okay. Guy number 1 is called Hack the Box.
Yo.
Okay. Yeah. And guy number 2 is is called Offensive Security Proving Grounds. Okay. And guy number 3, which they're gonna hate the most, is called Try Hack Me. Even the name you can hear. You can hear, or there's no fun in it. Ne? But what these are, it's an environment that has PCs that are vulnerable. Okay. They allow that. They're right there. They allow they're just right there for you to break into and have fun. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Hack the box is really difficult, right? Offensive security is twice more difficult.
Yes.
That
And
one
Try
was-
Hack Me is more difficult than that one. Yes.
So
The easiest at this point is Hack the Box.
Box.
And then middle is Offensive Security is Proving Grounds. And then the hardest one is Try Hack Me.
So it's 3 different types of
Yeah,
difficulty categories.
Yeah. We will start with Hack the Box, but before we get to those ones, we'll just start locally first with Hack the Box. Not Hack the Box. VirtualBox. Yeah. We'll just start with a VirtualBox. Okay. So this is what a VirtualBox looks like. The idea of a VirtualBox is that you're able to run an operating system inside your PC. Okay. So ideally, you'll be having pretty much like 2 operating systems. Okay. There's one running, and then there's your own operating system. In my case, it's the Linux that I'm hosting all of this on. Okay. In my VirtualBox, I've got a couple of operating systems. Ne? Some of these, they look disgusting, like Windows 98. But who still uses that anyways? Yeah. Anyhow, so this is what I got. Okay. So if you look at this, I have this called Metasploitable. Ne?
Okay.
Metasploitable is based on Ubuntu. Okay, it was built by the company called Rapid7, the creators of one of the tools you also hate the most because it's very difficult to use, called the Metasploit framework. Okay, that's what you'll spend like half your time in. Okay, they built this for you to practice with. Okay, so it's packed with vulnerabilities, and honestly speaking, if you can't even find any vulnerability, then I don't think you should be proceeding with this. Okay, because it's packed with them. Ne? Then there's this one. I'm sure some of us have used this before. Ne? Windows XP. Everyone has used Windows XP, ne?
Yeah.
Yeah, the boys have probably played like Grand Theft Auto Vice City and this thing. And then it was lagging, but it was playing. Ne? Yeah. And then there's this one called Crossroads. Ne? No, there is no operating system called Crossroads. I've called it Crossroads. Okay. I've downloaded that from a place called VulnHub. Okay. If you proceed with your career in cybersecurity, you'll be there like a lot. So when you get to VulnHub, you'll find like a lot of operating systems there. You'll find the ISOs, you download them, you put them in your VirtualBox and break into them. Once you're done, you submit a flag, you get points like that, and you go on. It sort of makes like a profile for you. Like, yeah. Okay. That's one I've downloaded there. We'll take a look at it as well. Then there's Windows 98. Nah. It was after 95, but it's still old. This is like before XP, also before Vista. Nah. Yeah, you have Windows 95 and 98. You have them there. Then there's FreeBSD. It's a type of, a Linux. Okay. Then there's Android Pie. We know what Android Pie is, which is Android version number 9. Yeah, which most Android phones run on. Okay. I'm still working on installing also the iPhone as well.
Is it Note 10?
Hmm?
Is it Note 10?
It's not only Note 10 that runs Android Pie. There's many others like our Galaxy. The entire Galaxy A series is running on Android 9. Yeah. Yeah. Even the S series, it's either 8 or 9 between the two. Yeah. Most of those they run on there. Okay. Yeah. So, anyway, these are the tools of trade to note when you're performing information gathering. Ne? We have got Nmap, which stands for the network mapper. Okay, we use this for like the network scanning, finding the computers that are there, what are the ports and services running, and so on and so forth. Those kind. Ne? You remember what ports and protocols are, isn't it? Things like your FTPs, which ports are open, is their website running on this thing or not? Those kind of stuff. Ne? Yeah. Then there's this one called Net Discover. So this Net Discover, we use it if you're in a network. Ne? If I'm in a Wi-Fi network per se, I can figure out what PCs are connected to the very same network. Ne? Yeah, that's what the Network Discover is used for. Then there are others, like the Harvester. Yes, you can hear the name. Ne? The Harvester. Okay, the Harvester is used for information mining, or data mining as they call it. Okay, is to find like entity information like emails and phone numbers on a provided domain. Let's say google.com. I can find email addresses that are associated with google.com, or phone numbers that are associated with google.com, and so on and so forth. Okay. Yeah. And then we have Maltego. Every time when you're done performing any penetration test, that's where you end with Maltego. Those who did cybersecurity, what do we use that for? So you were cramming?
Yeah.
You too? You just passed? We use Maltego to draft the reports. Okay? We use it to draft our cybersecurity report after we are done. Okay? And that's what we then give to whoever made the network to say, this is what I got, this is everything I broke into. If there's anything that's incriminating and it shows up there, then you should have an issue. Okay?
So is it connected to all those three?
No, these are separate tools. All of these are separate. And in most cases, Maltego doesn't come pre-installed, by the way, with Kali Linux. You have to install it. You'll figure out how to install it. I'm not going to tell you. Anyways.
Is it on GitHub?
I don't know. I get it when you're about to learn information gathering. It will also help you to know how to gather information, like how to install Maltego. I get it. Yeah. Anyways, then these two, Wireshark and tcpdump.
Oh, yeah.
These are your sniffers, right?
Yeah.
These are your sniffers. They're very easy to work with. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, right? But let's do a little demo, right? Let's do a little demo.
Now it's demo time. So we're going to do a little demo. In terms of penetration testing, we can make use of something known as a VirtualBox. Okay, and this is what a VirtualBox looks like. A VirtualBox is it's a visualization. Okay, it's basically some software that allows us to run a operating system inside an operating system. Like right now, I am currently running my Linux, but if you take a look at my VirtualBox, right now I am currently using Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager. You can use VMware and the others, but I prefer that you get used to using the Oracle VirtualBox. Okay, you can see a couple of operating systems that I have installed on my VirtualBox. Okay, I've got a Metasploitable, which is a Linux operating system that is built specifically for the sake of testing, penetration tests, and all that. So it's by default and by design vulnerable, and it has holes for you to pretty much hack into. Then we've got the quite the famous, in fact, Windows XP. We've got Crossroads. This is a not exactly 100% penetrable, but this is one I got from the Von Hub, and it is vulnerable, yes, and we don't really know what the vulnerability is, but we discover it. I've got the old Windows 98, got the FreeBSD, and I've got Android Pie, and FreeBSD is just one instance of Linux, and Android Pie, this is just Android. Okay. And to boot up a Linux machine, it's as easy as going to it. And remember, when you install your Oracle VirtualBox, you're not going to have any machine here, unlike me. You're not going to have any of these. So you actually have to download the CD, just like how you would install an operating system on your own laptop, you would install on the VirtualBox similarly. So you'd have to go and download the ISO file or the disk in a file of that operating system. And the way in which you do this, it's not exactly messed up per se. Let me open up a window for Firefox, just so I show you an instance of what you really need. If you go to a website like getmyos.com, when you get there, you're going to find a website with some operating systems there, like Windows 10, Manjaro Linux, Ubuntu, and a couple of others. You can download whichever one you would like to work with. Okay, say I would like to work with Elementary OS, for instance. So I can go there and I can go ahead and download the disk image for it, and then I can perform the installation in the VirtualBox by creating a new machine like so, and then giving the machine a name, okay, like so, and then I pretty much proceed with this wizard up until the end. And before you know it, you should be able to boot and install your operating system and have it installed in your VirtualBox like so. Okay. And when it comes to booting that operating system, it's as easy as clicking on it and clicking on start. Okay, once you've done so, it will take quite a while depending on the system specifications of that machine. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna boot this machine, and this is a Windows 98 machine. As much as some of you guys might not be familiar with this, but this is Windows 98. I don't even think I remember the password. Nope, not the password. Nope, not even the password either. Nope, I think I forgot the password to that. But there you go. Pretty much that's the rundown. Okay, let me turn this off. Yes, you can turn them off like so, power off the machine, and it happens like so. Okay, let me go ahead and boot up the Windows XP. Okay, and then we're going to do a little demo of some of the information gathering stages of how we can perform the information gathering from our local Linux. So this is now to get to the point where we assume the thought fact and idea that you are using Kali Linux. Okay, you're probably using Kali Linux, or per se maybe one of the advanced penetration testing distributions. Oop, that was pretty loud. Maybe you're using one of the advanced penetration testing distributions. Then you should be able to perform what I am doing now. And of course, this is assuming that you have a virtual machine. Okay, in this case, Windows XP. So this is Windows XP. It's a pretty fair and a pretty decent setup. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is Windows XP. Here's the Windows Firewall, and of course, this is the issue. Windows Firewall should be on all the time. That is the best security measure you can ever have. Okay, and let me just reset a few things back. Okay, just gonna reset a few things back. I'll explain them as I go. Okay, oops, currently in use. Okay, let me just open up my task manager. This is just a simple cleanup. MGR. Okay, like so. Okay, I'm going to end that process. Okay, let me just delete this file. Okay, voila. Alright, so here's my Windows XP machine. Right. So let me get rid of this. Just gonna minimize it. It's still open, as you can see in this little preview. It's still open. Okay. Now I'm going to open up my terminal. So here's my Linux terminal. Let me clear this out. So this is my Linux terminal, and I've got the tools that I require, things such as the tcpdump, Nmap, and all the others. I've got them pre-installed in my Linux machine. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start performing some information gathering. Okay. Again, the information gathering can either be passive or active. In this case, it cannot be done passively. I don't really think the internet has anything to do with my specific machine, so there's nothing much you can tell on that regard. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to use this wonderful tool called NetDiscover. Okay. And what NetDiscover does is it's going to identify some of the computers that are currently in my network. Okay. So we let NetDiscover do its stuff. Okay. By the way, if you're unable to identify your machine on NetDiscover, there are cases where you can't. That's probably because when you set up the network for your Windows machine, when you got to the network, you did not set it as a bridged adapter. So ensure that it's on the bridged adapter, not NAT. But mine is on bridged adapter, so there should be communication between my current machine and the guest OS, which is the Windows XP. So here we go. I've got some output. Let me Control C to stop. So here we go. Here's a special machine with a known vendor, PCS system link GmbH, whatever that means. Okay. And that is actually the adapter that is currently used by the network to connect to my host machine. Okay. So if you see that, this is what I got here. Okay. So that is the current machine. And we can actually try to ping it. Okay. 192.168.43.207. We can try to ping it. And obviously we're not going to get any responses. And we'll take a look at why in a few. But let's set that aside for now. And let's take a look at the Windows. Okay. Looking at the Windows, how can we identify the IP address of the Windows? Well, if you recall, when we looked at the Cisco packet tracer, we said that you will need to visit the command line. So I'm going to use CMD for this. And then you can just use ipconfig, like so. And then by so doing, you can actually get that IP address for that machine, which is 207, which kind of matches what I actually have here. Okay. Now back to the question as to why did I not receive any packets when I performed the ping. And this was due to the firewall that I actually set up when I turned on this Windows machine, which kind of seems perfect, isn't it? Right. Now, let me just turn it off just so I can test out the theory. Okay. So I'm just going to turn off the firewall to test out the theory. Okay. Test out the theory such that we want to tell if really it's the firewall that's causing the pings not to be received. So same thing, I'm going to ping. You will begin to notice that there are now responses, and you'll even notice that little network signal right there is beeping like so. So that it means it's working perfectly fine. Okay, I'm gonna stop it like so. So I'm actually now able to communicate with that machine. Okay, and that is a good thing with it, with the firewall. Okay, let me turn on the firewall. Okay, if you turn on the firewall, once again, you will notice that it's going to block pretty much all of them. Okay, that's because the firewall has been set to such a level that is pretty much paranoid. Okay, you can even say do not allow exceptions, as in allow nothing, as in literally nothing. Okay, or we could create some exceptions in this context. Okay, we can open up a port per se, or we can create a program. Which program would we like to communicate through the firewall? We can do this and select one of the programs to communicate through the firewall. But this is something else that we're going to see in future. But for the sake of testing, I'm going to keep the firewall turned off. But at least at this point in time, you know what this proper security procedure is. keep that firewall turned on. Okay, firewall is fine. So I first start off by seeing if I can communicate with that machine, and it so appears that I can actually communicate with the machine. So what do I proceed to do next is I'm going to proceed to perform an Nmap scan against that target host. So I'm going to do Nmap and Nmap 192.168.43.207, like so. Okay, and you'll notice I get a little output. Okay, and it says this is the Windows report. The name of the machine apparently is called Windows Lab. I don't know if that is true. Let's actually double check that. Perhaps it's not called Windows Lab. So here's a little bit of some information on my PC. What's the computer name? Whatever this is, the full computer name is Windows Lab. So Nmap is actually able to figure that part out, which is pretty smart, I must say. So that's nice. And then we've got some open ports, port 135, port 139, port 445. That's some of the cool. Okay. You can also perform a vulnerability scan using Nmap by using the script vuln flag, like so. Obviously, I still have the IP address of the target. Okay. And I can do it like so, and it can perform the vulnerability scan for the target host as well. Okay. Remember then again, this is just a information gathering stage. Okay. And of course, not only Nmap is used for this. Remember, you've got other tools like the Harvester and the others, which is what we're going to look at as well in a few. Okay. If you have Kali Linux installed and you just run the Harvester, it's going to be able to run the Harvester automatically for you. But unfortunately for me, I'm not on Kali Linux. But then fortunately for me, I actually have the Harvester installed on my own Linux. Okay, so for those running this on Kali Linux or Parrot OS or any of the other advanced penetration testing distributions, if you just run the Harvester like so, you should be able to get an output. In my case, it's a little bit different. Okay, I have to say Python 3, the harvester.py. Okay, but then again, if you run the Harvester without anything, you're going to get the very same output that I get, which looks like this. Okay, if you just say the Harvester with nothing, you're actually going to get something like this. Okay, you're going to get a little usage. It gives you the usage and it gives you some examples to say use the -d and then give the domain, use the tag L and give the limit. Okay, and then you can use that for screenshots if you'd like to get screenshots and so on, and then the B for the source. Okay, and the one which is required by default is the domain. So let's suppose and propose I've been given a target of evaluation by, say, Microsoft to perform some penetration tests. So I'd use the Harvester like so, and then I would say domain. Okay, and then I would specify what the target domain is. In this case, I would say it's Microsoft.com, something like that, and you'd hit your enter. Okay, and it doesn't find any IPs. That's probably because I did not give any source. You can say give a source, maybe Bing. Okay, something like that. Oh, I think I may have misspelled it. Something like that. Okay. And then you wait while it generates some outputs. So what it's doing exactly is it's performing some information gathering. Okay. So it's doing some research on Microsoft.com and seeing if it can find any information that is associated with Microsoft.com. And it's doing this research on Bing. Okay. So this is what it found. It found edge payments.microsoft.com, FPT, and whatever and whatever and whatever. This is some targets that it found. Perhaps maybe these can be interesting in my penetration tests. I might even want to look at some of those. Okay. Anyway, that's how you would make use of the Harvester. Anyhow, and back to Nmap. There's the output of Nmap. It showed some vulnerabilities that return some stuff like the MS08067. For instance, which is a Samba vulnerability. And some of these things you can do a simple Google search, by the way, to see if you can find some information on it. Okay. So that's pretty much it. Let me leave it there with the demo on information gathering. Okay. Back to it. All right. So what is the right way of doing things for the good guys? It is to perform your system maintenance. So system maintenance, unfortunately, system maintenance is non-negotiable. you have to perform your patches, you have to perform your system upgrades, and you have to perform them regularly. And in terms of system patches, they can either be two things. Okay, you can either perform a hot patch or you can perform a cold patch. A hot patch is rather targeted. It pretty much fixes or upgrades a specific application or a specific part of your operating system. Whereas a cold patch is more broad and it's overall. And if you look at it, when a cold patch is done, in fact, your PC would rather reboot, it will turn itself off and then turn itself back on in order for it to perform that reboot, to perform that patch installation. Okay. Another thing you might want to look at is this wonderful thing known as the OWASP Top 10. However, for the OWASP Top 10, we'll be looking at these in weeks to come in future. Okay. Another demo time. So, this now will sound a lot difficult. Okay, it will sound very, very painful. In my Linux system, I've got this wonderful thing called MSF console. Okay, which is known as the Metasploit framework console. It's one useful thing I'm going to use for the demo. Okay. So the Metasploit framework console, in terms of penetration testing, it's most commonly used to perform testing, to perform exploitation, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the cyberkill chain that we have taken a look at, if you look here, we saw some of these vulnerabilities that actually showed up. Okay, backdoors and confliggers. One that I'm quite interested in is the MS08067 vulnerability. Okay, which is this one, which is a Samba vulnerability, and that's the one that I would like to perform some exploitations on. Okay, and the wonderful thing, if you do a simple Google search on the MS08067 vulnerability, you will notice that the Metasploit framework actually has an exploit pre-built for that vulnerability. Okay, then again, as I've mentioned, this will look and feel very, very complicated. Again, it's just a demo. Okay, so I'm gonna wait for my Metasploit framework to show up. Okay, and this runs on Ruby, so it's going to be pretty slow. But anyhow, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a specific exploit. So I'm gonna say MS08 067. So I'm just selecting a specific one. So there is MS08067. Then I'm going to say show me the options. Then again, do not worry if you have no idea what I'm doing. That's perfectly fine. I do not blame you. Okay, let me exit out of this for a second. Okay. What I want to do is execute this actually with sudo privileges. That's actually something that I was supposed to do in the beginning. So now I have to pretty much redo that whole MS08067 again. But that's perfectly fine. That's not a big issue. Okay, so what I'm going to be attempting to do now is I'm going to attempt to exploit that Windows machine. Okay, going to be a little easier due to the fact that the firewall is off. Kind of makes my job a whole lot easier. Although there are ways of going around that, but we're not going to be looking at that, unfortunately. Okay, so now I'm going to say use MS08 tag 067. Okay, it will select that for me. Okay, and then I'm gonna say show options, like so, and then I'll notice I need to specify the remote host and that 445 port. If you look there, you'll notice that was one of the open ports, that port 445. And that's basically the port that I am seeking to exploit. The fact that this port is open is that which I'm looking to exploit. So I'm going to tell the Metasploit console to set the R host for me to the IP address of the target. In this case, the target of evaluation. And in this context, I want just this IP address. Remember, this is the IP address of the target host. Just gonna copy that, and then I am going to paste that there. And then hit enter. Okay, then let me show options again. Let me see. Okay, perfect. Now that has been set, I'm not gonna modify any of the other things. Okay, and then I'm just going to say exploit. Okay, so now the exploit is currently running against the target Windows machine, which is currently that one, and it is currently running that exploit. You'll notice that there is nothing that really happened. You didn't see anything big that was happening there. But in my Metasploit, it said session opened, and then it changed to say Meterpreter. But before this, it actually said MSF6, whatever that means. But now it says Meterpreter. If I say help, you'll notice some interesting things that I can actually perform on the target machine. Simple things such as screenshot. Okay, so I can just do and say screenshot. Okay, I can do that. Okay, and it says saved to tools, the harvester, whatever that is. Let me open my file manager. Then let me go to home. Okay, remember they say we should go to tools, so I'm gonna go to tools. Then I'm gonna go into the harvester, and then there's some file there with EE whatever, which is this file. And that kind of looks like the the screenshot of the Windows machine. And then again, it showed absolutely no sign on the target. If you saw that, okay, it performed nothing, and this is like literally what we have there, isn't it? Yeah. And there's a whole lot of other things you can perform. Hash dump, get system. This is pretty much getting. This is the performance of that privilege escalation, but we're not gonna look at this in detail. This is just the MSF console. We're not gonna look at this yet. We're not gonna look at it in too much of a big detail. Okay, you can upload certain files, create files, delete files, download files, and so on and so forth. That is pretty much the entire cyberkill chain done like in a heartbeat, like so. And that's just because someone has decided to use a old PC for some odd reason. Anywho, anyhow, I'm gonna exit out of this and exit out of this. That is one approach where we do not have to perform the weaponization stage. However, in the very same cyberkill chain, we can take the very same approach and the very same methodology, but we can use a pre-built virus. Okay, so let me go back out of the harvester. Okay, I've got this wonderful package called the pack, whatever that means. Okay, so I'm gonna cd into pack. So this is something that I got for myself, and unfortunately I cannot share this with you. This is just for the sake of educational purposes. Okay, so I've got a whole lot of these tools of trade to use and so on, but the wonderful tool I would like to show you for demonstration's sake and demo is called Poison Ivy. So I'm going to do this and open up Poison Ivy. Okay, now that I'm in Poison Ivy, you'll notice that I have this poisonivy.exe. And yes, .exe files are only files that you're able to open on a Windows machine. And you're probably like, but Nash, you're using a Linux machine, how do you open that file? That's perfectly fine. That's because I have modified my Linux to do certain things. I'm going to perform something called wine. Okay, then I'm going to take a look at that Poison Ivy. I'm not going to write down everything, whatever, .exe. Okay, and then I'm going to take a look at Poison Ivy. Okay, and Poison Ivy is it's something known as a RAT, or in full, RAT stands for Remote Access Trojan, and the Remote Access Trojan pretty much creates a Trojan horse for you. Okay, and those who are unsure of what a Trojan horse is basically a file that pretends to do something else, but it is in turn doing something else in the background. Okay, so here's Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is right there. I'm going to show Poison Ivy. Okay, let me open it. Okay, I think I should just be doing a direct click on that. Oh, let me close this and run it again. Okay, oops. Let me do this. Okay, let me rerun my Poison Ivy. So there is my Poison Ivy. So there. Okay. So there is Poison Ivy. Okay. And what I'm going to do with Poison Ivy now is I'm going to create a new server of some sort. Okay. Let me just minimize this. Okay. Let me also get rid of this. Okay. Let me leave it somewhere around there. Okay. So in my Poison Ivy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something known as a Trojan horse, or server in this context. Okay. And the idea of a server really is it's just going to be a little mini file, and this little file is just going to have it's just one that I'm going to deliver to the target, and the target opens it, and that's going to essentially create a backdoor. It seems like I'm having little troubles with Poison Ivy, so let me delete profiles on my Poison Ivy. So there's Poison Ivy. Okay, and in profiles, I created a profile before. Let me get rid of this. Okay, just gonna delete this. Okay, let me rename this into something else. Okay, do not worry about that step. Remember, this is just for the sake of demo. Okay, there. Let me see if I can execute that once more. And yes, do not show this, and I can read this. No one ever reads end user license agreements anyways. I agree. There's Poison Ivy. Okay, so in my Poison Ivy, I'm just gonna start off by creating a little mini server. Okay, so if I mix this out, this is how it looks like. I'm gonna create a little profile. I can just give this profile a name. Say I'll call this slave, for instance. Okay, and then my IP address needs to go there. I can't give 127.0.0.1 because that's actually a loopback address, unfortunately. So let me just discover what my own IP address is. It's this one. Okay, so I'm going to use this one instead. Okay, and that's what I'm going to use within that Poison Ivy. So I'm going to put it there and paste it right there. Okay, and I don't need to connect through proxies. I don't need to hijack any proxy, whatever that means. Proceed. And then if I want this to start on the system, when the system starts, I can do that. And I can have the start as something specific. Okay, I can do that, but I don't really want to do this. Again, it's for the sake of testing. Let me go back to the profiles. Oh, let me cancel this and restart this again. Okay, so new server, create a profile, creating a profile called slave. Okay, and then again, my IP address goes there. Proceeding. I can have the start on the system startup. I can do that. Okay, and continue. I don't need any of these other stuff. Okay, I'm not going to do much on this. Let me activate the keylogger. Okay, and then maybe I can have this inject into a process. Okay, and let me make this inject into, say, task manager. Okay, this is such that it appears as task manager, and if you delete task manager, it cannot delete the malware. Kind of dangerous, you might say. Okay, can proceed with the next stuff. Then now I'm going to generate it. Okay, and the generation part can be quite something. Oh, let me give it a name. Let's say love. Okay, proceed in, and I can generate that. Okay, then we have to give this file a name, probably something that someone would open. So what would someone normally open? Well, someone might open files such as free Bitcoin or FIFA 24, or something that can be quite applicable in real life, like Avast, for instance. Yeah, Avast is an antivirus. Someone might open that. Okay, perfectly fine. Then I'm just gonna hit on OK. Okay, once that is done, I'm going to create a client. And the client is just a listener to listen until whoever I send that file to opens that file. Then essentially it should tell me that someone has opened your malware. So I should get a connection here, essentially. Okay, so here in my Poison Ivy, there is Avast. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take Avast into my virtual machine. Okay, let me just minimize this a little bit. Let me close this, and let me close this as well. So here's Avast. Okay, I'm actually able to drag and drop things into my VirtualBox. This is because I performed the installation of this, which are known as guest editions. Okay, again, step-by-steps on how to install that will be given to you. Okay, so here's Avast. Just gonna drag and drop it into my virtual machine. Okay, so here we've got this little file, and of course, it doesn't really look like something that someone would open, I must say. But then again, we just did half the work. Okay, before I open this file, we need to just take a look at what do antiviruses really say about that file. Okay, so I'm gonna go to a nice website called VirusTotal. Okay, and do a simple scan on that file that I have just created using that Poison Ivy. Okay, so I'm gonna go to virustotal.com, and virustotal.com is just a website that has access to quite a lot of antiviruses. Okay, a whole lot of antiviruses, and essentially when I'm here, I can scan some of the files that I got with different kinds of antiviruses, and you will notice that the file that I just created now, that little Trojan horse, not really a big deal per se. It's not really a big deal. I mean, you'll find that many antiviruses might be able to capture that file, and really if there's no antivirus that can find that file, then I'll be really worried. But anyways, there is Avast. I'm gonna upload it, confirm the upload, okay, and then let it perform that upload, okay, and then you're gonna wait for the results, okay. 2 antiviruses so far. Klamov is able to find it. There's others. This one said it's a poison, whatever poison is, poison may, unsafe, and so on and so on. Yeah, other antiviruses are able to catch it. You may have noticed by so far. If your antivirus is here and it hasn't identified it, then clearly there's an issue. But you can see most antiviruses can identify. If we have these antiviruses like Alibaba. Honestly, if you're gonna install an antivirus with such a name, then I don't really think, I don't know. And then you've got CMC and the others. They can't detect it. But majority of these most commonly used antiviruses like Symantec and Panda and Microsoft Windows Defender, the Nano, Kingsoft, Max, and my favorite is at Node 32. Obviously, it catches them. Okay, and all the others are Avast, and the others, they're actually able to capture it. But then again, our Windows machine doesn't really have an antivirus in it, so again, it's for the sake of testing. Okay, so in my Windows machine, so this is what I'm gonna do. Here's my client that I just created to monitor the connection. Okay, and here's the Windows machine. So in the Windows PC, I'm just gonna, open that mini harmless file that we have there. Okay, which is perfectly fine, isn't it? I mean, there shouldn't be a problem opening that file. It does this. I don't really know what that is, what that file is. I think it's injecting or something, maybe. Okay, and then on this side, it should be able to then open up that connection. Okay, and there it is. There is the slave connection that we were waiting for. Okay, and there is that slave connection. You can notice there it says slave admin, that's a Windows XP, and a whole lot of other information. And if I double click on this, I'll get this little window to perform the command and control in this case. So I can perform the command and control, and this includes things like getting passwords or the keylogger. I can access the keylogger, or I can I can access that little screenshot. There it is. Okay, then I know what's really on the screen exactly. Okay, there it is. I know what's on the screen, and there are other things I can do, like webcam capture. Fortunately, there is no webcam on that Windows machine. Otherwise, it would have just gone bad. There's a whole lot of other things you can do, like the remote shell. You can activate this remote shell, and I can do a whole lot of things with this remote shell, like sending a simple message. I can say msg space star space, please be safe. You were hacked. Of course, that looks like it didn't do anything, but on the Windows machine, this is pretty much what they see. So, quite a big deal, I must say. And then again, you can't really tell much from this side. You can't really tell much that you actually hacked. So people might ask, well, how right now I'm actually hacked? What can I do? Well, before we get to that part, need to also understand that everything can be controlled on the target machine, by the way. I can control the mouse and the keyboard. So how does that look? It'll look something like this. Okay, so this is the current machine. So let me actually set this to something shorter, like say maybe 100. Okay, so this is what's now happening, is that I am then essentially able to control this target and click on buttons like the start button, like you saw. See the start button, and I can click on run, and I can open maybe Notepad. Remember, I'm doing this thing from my own host PC. Okay, the zombie drone in this case. Okay, I can open that, and really in the Windows machine, it actually opened up the Notepad like you saw. Okay, and that's the whole concept and idea of how that command and control works. Okay, but now here's the compromised PC. Here's a Windows compromised PC. What does the compromised PC do? How do we fix that? For the compromised PC, you should learn this, and you should know how to do this. This is in terms of mitigating the threats. So you should be able to access, obviously, CMD. When you get to CMD, you're going to do a simple thing such as net set, okay, AON. Okay, So that's what you do. Netstat is going to list out for you all your network connections. And what we're actually seeking out for are the established connections, which is essentially this one. And once you get here, you need to look at the one that has obviously the established connection, but we want to take note of the process identifier, the PID. Okay. And we notice that this is 728. So what we're then going to do is we're going to now open up our task manager. Okay, task manager. Okay, so here's task manager, and we're going to now search through task manager for whichever process has ID 728. And it might be the case that you don't have PID on your task manager. So to do this, you're just gonna go to view and select columns and then make sure that the PID is turned on. Okay. Then we're gonna search through these and we're going to look for that 728. Okay, just scroll through these and here is 728, which says IE Explorer. Okay, so once I get to this IE Explorer, I'm just gonna go to it and end that process and close it off. Okay, which seems perfectly fine. Okay, now on that Poison Ivy on the other end, let's say I would like to get a new screenshot. It's going to, well, start running whatever it is that it's doing. You'll notice that this is actually not the current screen, by the way. We have something else different open right now. So that just means that the target has lost connection, and that is what we want. So now the Poison Ivy does not have access to the target machine. You cannot perform any keylogging. You also don't have access to the remote shell anymore. If I try to do the very same thing that I did, the MSG sending the message, say hello, for example, you notice it doesn't really do what it did before, and we don't really get any output here. So that has mitigated the problem. And of course, you might want to get rid of that that file that you just got. Okay, but yes, now you know how to mitigate those kind of malware threats. Okay, if you were, of course, hacked into by means of using the Metasploit framework, all I can tell you is may the Lord be with you. There's nothing you can do. Okay, for now, of course. And then obviously in upcoming weeks, we'll take a look at different ways of mitigations and so on and so forth. But then again, all of this was essentially just a demo. Okay, close this off. Okay, and I'll power off this. Okay, then the last piece to look at now is the Kali Linux, the Advanced Penetration Testing Distribution. Okay, so I'm going to close off Poison Ivy and all the others. I don't really think, okay, maybe I might need this. Okay, so now in terms of setting up Kali Linux, when you're now setting up your Kali Linux, there's different ways of you installing Kali Linux. You can install it directly onto your PC, maybe replacing your guest OS, your Windows, or you can install your Kali Linux in a VirtualBox. So that's to say, it looks something like this, and you have your Kali Linux probably showing somewhere there, and you can actually turn it on and off, and essentially use your Kali Linux and your Linux distribution and perform your penetration tests and so on and so forth. That's another way. Or you can use the WSL, okay, Windows Subsystem for Linux. That's another way of doing it. But all of these by instructions, you're going to find them on kali.org. Go to kali.org. You're going to pretty much be shown the home page for Kali Linux. Okay, Kali Linux looks something like this. Of course, it looks beautiful, I must say. Okay, and there are different things you can. There's different tools that come with Kali Linux. Once again, Kali Linux works in different ways. Okay, different ways and different places. Okay, this is how it would look like if you installed it using WSL. You would have your Windows PC, but you have access to Kali Linux's stuff. This one is called NetHunter. I don't really advise performing penetration tests on a mobile phone, so I'm not even gonna bother explaining this using termux and all that. I'm not gonna bother explaining that. Then there's something called undercover mode and all the other stuff. But anyways, let's take a look at different ways in which you can install this. Okay, when you get to download Kali, okay, you'll be taken into a page like this. Okay, you're going to select whichever one works out for you. But the ones in question are the installer image. The installer image is if you're going to create a bootable USB. So you'll have a USB that's at least 5 gigabits and above. You're going to set up your Kali Linux in it. Okay, so that whenever you would like to use your Kali Linux, you're just going to plug in your USB, turn your PC off, and then turn it on by means of the USB, and it will boot into Kali Linux. Okay, or you can use the VirtualBox. You can go there and download the VirtualBox machines. It will allow you to be able to use it in your VirtualBox. Okay, another way, there's the live boot I was talking about, by the way. Another way is by using the WSL, which is the Windows subsystem for Linux. And if you want to install it by means of using the WSL, you can follow these step-by-step instructions by clicking on the documentation. And then once you get there, this is a step-by-step. You're going to go by starting with the Kali WSL. You're just going to click on that for Kali WSL. And then once you get there, you're just going to follow these. Okay, the quick method of setting this up, which is this. You're just going to follow those instructions. Okay, and you proceed. Okay, using WSL1 or whatever it is, and you proceed up until you have your Kali. You'll probably have something like this once you're done. Okay, and then you'll have your Kali Linux running alongside with your Windows, so you don't have to lose all your files. Okay, and you can install it directly from the Microsoft Store, of course. Okay, different ways then again, and I'll make sure that I do attach some videos as well to show you the other ways that you can install your Kali Linux. Okay, once that is done, then you can then be able to perform your penetration test. So what is to come next? So in future, what's going to be coming soon are we're going to be looking at Hack the Box. Hack the Box is a community. Okay, it's a community that was built for you to actually go there and try some penetration tests. Okay, so it's a whole platform that's filled with vulnerable machines for you to try out. You connect to them and you try as much as you can to break into some of them, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And this is to come out in the near future. But anyhow, that is it for today's lesson, and I hope to see you guys in the future. Stay safe. See you guys.